Hello and welcome to Witchy Wellness Radio. I'm your host, Lauren Chalantani, women's holistic health coach and fellow recovering perfectionist. This podcast was created to show you that your body is not in the way, it is actually leading your way. Hello everybody, welcome back. You are listening to episode 170, Nutrition for Great Sex with DeLozier. I am very particular about the type of CBD and hemp products that I use. There's so much hype and lack of testing and quality in the industry. So the company that I love and use is Evo Hemp. Not only do they have a beautiful product like hemp seeds, CBD oil, gummies, even hemp chocolate, protein bars, protein powder, they also support a 40-acre co-op farm in Minnesota, which is farmer-owned, focusing on bringing equality and innovation back to Black, Indigenous, and other socially disadvantaged farmers. So if you are looking into trying any type of CBD or hemp products, head over to evohemp.com. The link is in the show notes, and make sure you use code WICHY, WICTHY, for 20% off of your purchase. And please enjoy episode 170, Nutrition for Great Sex with DeLozier. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Witchy Wellness Radio. Again, I am your host, Lauren, and this is the show you learn how your body is not in the way, but actually leading the way. And today we have a beautiful example of that, DeLozier. She is here to talk about nutrition for great sex. I'm sure everybody is going to pique your interest. She is a licensed acupuncturist specializing in sexual health. And in her book, Diet for Great Sex, Food for Male and Female Sexual Health, it has been featured in the Daily Mail, CBS, UK's The Sun, Mel Magazine, the Toronto Sun, and she has been offered expert commentary for the Huffington Post, Marie Claire, and Good Housekeeping. Always rather obsessed with diet, nutrition, and natural health, Christine's philosophy is rooted in an evidence-based understanding of the psychological effect of food on the body, while honoring the wisdom of traditional Chinese medicine. She treats every patient holistically as an individual and wishes to use her unique skill set to help others in a kind and loving way. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you. Sorry, that was a mouthful. That's a mouthful. I'm going to have to tell my publicist to trim that down a little bit because it's so much there. But actually, my approach is a physiological approach. No, because I know, psychological and physiological look strikingly similar on the page. So,
and I just keep going, and I didn't even realize it. So thank you. Sure. It does happen. And well, it physiological, but it is a psychological thing. You don't realize how much food does impact you psychologically.
It does. It does. It impacts you emotionally, our mental health, our sexual health, everything.
So maybe I just had a little Freudian slip there. So I apologize, but thank you for pointing that out.
Oh, that's okay.
But I would love to hear how you got into did you start out with acupuncture, and how did you transition to this more diet approach with treating, I wouldn't say treating, but promoting optimal sexual health in people? How did you get here? We love to hear the hero's journey on the show.
Well, it started in childhood, with my obsession with food, total foodie. I've always just loved food. I love the aesthetic of food. I'm one of those annoying people that takes pics of her food at different angles because I think, oh, this is beautiful. I cook, I pay attention to how pretty it looks, not only how it tastes, but I've always had the idea that nature was the kind of seat of good health, and that by tackling our health through nature, we would have that's the foundation for everything else, So that's where it all began. when I was an undergraduate, I was taking a lot of science courses. I was studying biology and psychology, and I trained to be a research scientist. So that also kind of laid the groundwork. Then when I became an acupuncturist and went into private practice, I did not set out to specialize in sexual health. Just one patient came in one day and he said, is there anything you could do to help me have stronger erections? And I said, well, sure, let's give it a go. Let's give it a go because, I treated a lot of back pain, headaches, neck pain, that sort of thing, but I hadn't treated a lot of sexual health. And he had amazing results. And then I had several patients back to back that just kept coming in and having really good results. And I thought, this is something that's really hard to treat in modern medicine. It's very difficult to treat. So this was something that brought him and his wife so much joy and, brought them closer and improved their intimacy. And I thought this is something that's really meaningful. It's a meaningful thing to specialize. So I decided to specialize in sexual health. And, that's where I got there. But my love of food is always nagging at me. And so I always ask my patients, what do you eat? And we try to come up with some dietary strategies to improve their treatment goals. And having this kind of science background and this research background, I wanted to see what the evidence was to support that, So, we all think of great sex as the right mood, the right person, the right situation. We think about all of those psychological processes, and physiologically, great sex is when our nerves fire strong, rapid impulses to and from our genitals. It's when we have abundant blood flow, and it's when our sex hormones are balanced. So what the literature says, what the medical research says, is that food very much affects all three of those. It affects how quickly and strongly those nerves fire those signals of pleasure, and it affects blood flow. It affects our blood vessels. It affects hormonal balance. So basically, that's what the whole book is about. I mean, at least the first half of it is all the sciencey stuff. But I tried to write it in a really fun way that's kind of digestible by the average person. I didn't want it to be a textbook. It's supposed to be fun to read. So that's that. And so I wanted to put all of this stuff that I was talking with patients about on paper and have one thing, because I was doing enough lecturing with my patients. It's like, I can't cram any more into this hour-long session. You're going to have to read something. So that was it.
Oh, beautiful. I love to hear how people's stories come together, and it found you, really. I mean, you didn't have to go searching for it. I love to dive deeper into kind of the acupuncture Chinese medicine approach. We touched on it, strong nerves that fire and wire efficiently, strongly. But from a Chinese medicine perspective, can we kind of dive into that? Is it, I know there are different types of energies. Is it a stagnation thing? Is it an overproduction of one energy? Please enlighten us.
Sure. So I broke the chapters down into, the three main categories where we talked about this trifecta of great sex, nerves, hormones, and nerves, hormones, and blood flow. And so there are kind of Chinese medicine equivalents, in the chapter on hormones. It's, we can see it as a balance of the yin and the yang, so they're the complex, interplay between thousands of hormones and chemicals in our body is the balance of yin and yang. It's this constant fluctuation, and yin, turns into yang, the hot male energy of yang becomes and nourishes the cool feminine energy of yin. And so the yin substances are like the blood and the fluids of the body, and the yang is like the muscle contraction and the function of the body. The great sex is when yin and yang are balanced, and that kind of represents our hormonal balance. The qi is kind of embodied in nerve impulse. So the free flow of qi is what we want. Every time, we think of qi as being this abstract concept, but in practitioners of Chinese medicine, we consider it to be a very real, concrete substance that moves through the body. And you can kind of see that every time you see a nerve fire. That is the movement of qi. Every time the heart contracts, that is the movement of qi. When peristalsis occurs, when food moves from the mouth to the anus, that coordinated sequence of qi movement moves that food along. And so, when your lungs expand to draw air into the body, that's the movement of qi. And qi can become blocked. We can have a physical blockage of qi in, not just with injury. Yes, we can have a physical injury block the qi, but we can have substances block the qi. Plaque accumulation blocks the qi in blood. So we think of the qi as like the nerve impulses, and we think of the blood is the blood. That translates, just fine. And when we have plaque accumulations, the vessels stiffen, and we have a restricted flow of qi in blood. So when qi flows abundantly and freely, and blood flows abundantly and freely, we have great sex. When it's blocked, we don't have as good of sex. But then, of course, you can think of great sex also as how strong is the essence. The essence of life is embodied in menses and sperm. And so when you have a strong, healthy kidney, because with the kidneys in Chinese medicine are considered to be the root of the essence, then we have great fertility, we have great sex, if that makes sense. So the Chinese medical approach is to nourish the kidneys, to promote the free flow and abundance of qi and blood, and the balance of yin and yang.
Amazing. So how do you support a healthy kidney through your own diet? Like, what are things to eat? What add more in? What are some things to avoid? How can someone start to transition to this type of a diet or lifestyle?
Well, everything is interconnected. And when we tax other areas of the body, it kind of taxes the kidneys, for example. So all of our stress really taxes the kidneys. Our high cortisol levels tax the kidneys. When we restrict blood flow and qi flow, it ends up taxing the kidneys. There are certain foods that are thought to nourish the kidneys, but they also have to have the free flow of qi and blood. But it's a whole picture. Our emotions affect the kidneys. Fear, carrying fear or having trauma affects the kidneys. Fear is like the emotion of the kidneys, if you will. So that's how it's considered in Chinese medicine. And so fear will most affect that organ system. So we have to promote it, yes, with the foods that we eat. We want to, nourish the kidneys. But in general, I feel like the most obvious thing in our modern day is all the ways that we're burdening, our bodies with, the foods that we eat, all the processed foods that have all these chemicals in them. We have the environmental exposures to toxins as well in our food and our air, in our water, and that sort of thing. And all of those tax the kidneys. And we have the science to show how it affects hormonal balance, how it affects us neurologically, all those things. The endocrine system as well as affected quite a bit by all these environmental exposures. And there's a lot of science to show it, which was so interesting as I was writing the book. We think of things like EMFs, electromagnetic fields, and, that sort of thing as conspiracy. The idea that these affect us, our health, it's considered to be a conspiracy, and, it conjures up these images of people wearing, tinfoil hats in the 60s and stuff. And so I didn't actually expect to find a lot of science to support it, because I thought, oh, well, this isn't really widely accepted that this is, this is real. I found decades of literature, loads and loads, study after study after study showing that, oh yeah, there's, a very huge body of evidence that shows that our exposure to, environmental toxins and yes, EMFs, cell phones, wireless, things like that do affect our endocrine system. They affect our nerves. They affect our cardiovascular health. So, sorry, back to your question. I kind of got a little off track, didn't I?
You're good. You're good.
With the kidneys, you kind of have to take it as a whole, is what I'm saying, I guess. It's you got to look at the whole picture. Our diets very much, they can either nourish the blood, they can nourish the chi, or they can kind of block the chi and blood, which will, lead to other problems.
Okay. I totally get what you're saying. And I'll link in the show notes. We actually had someone on talking about EMF exposure, and his father, he started this company to kind of keep the legacy going. His father had decades of research on cell phone, EMF, I guess now Wi-Fi as well. But the science is out there. It is kind of crazy. We're just walking around with all these devices on us all the time. But I'll link down the show notes because that is literally a whole other topic if you want to learn more.
I've got a chapter on it in the book, so you can definitely learn more about it.
Yeah. So as a holistic picture, obviously we want to avoid processed foods. I'm assuming things like alcohol or even caffeine, sugar, those kind of things that are taxing on the body. What are some top things that you should avoid? And holistically, what are some things to add in to your diet for eating for better sex?
Sure. So as far as things to avoid, in Chinese medicine, a good diet, a balanced diet is considered to be equally representative of the 5 flavors, so sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and acrid. We tend to favor the sweet flavor and we favor the salty flavor, with our processed foods. You throw in as much sugar and as much salt and as much fat as you can for it to taste good. It tastes all the better. And of course, our brains adapt to that, and they, produce less dopamine with the same amount of fats. And we have to keep upping the ante to get that same satisfaction out of food. So, basically, the favoring that sweet flavor, for example, induces things like leptin resistance, which then leads to sex hormone, imbalance in sex hormones. Favoring the salty flavor, constricts blood vessels and it stiffens them. It also kind of sabotages our potassium, which promotes vascular health, for example. What we lack, what we don't have enough of is the bitter flavor, which is our leafy greens, it's our salads. And, if we look at other primates, for guidance, because we clearly don't know what the heck we're talking about. We go around asking each other what we should eat. Other animals just know what to eat. We don't know that. We just, what should we eat? What should we eat? We don't know, but if we look at other primates, they sit around eating lots and lots of leaves. They sit around spending much of their day eating leaves. And in doing so, they get many times the amount of potassium, calcium, magnesium, and all of these minerals as we do, and which promotes vascular health. Leafy greens are probably, if I were to say, just an example of one good food for sexual health, it's probably my favorite food because it affects that entire trifecta of great sex. So leafy greens have been shown in research to reduce cortisol levels. Well, cortisol sabotages testosterone, and that's important for both male and female sexual health. It's not just important for male libido, for example. Females in some cases are prescribed testosterone to improve libido, for example. Leafy greens are one of the best things you can do to encourage blood flow because they have so many different phytonutrients that kind of attack that aspect of great sex in many different ways. So number one, they're high in dietary nitrates, not the meat, cold cut type nitrates, but the natural kind that promote vascular health, and they actually dilate blood vessels in the short term, even for better blood flow. And they are high in potassium, which, softens that delicate lining of blood vessels and makes them more elastic. So you get more blood flow. And also, they have tons of antioxidants. So that speeds and strengthens those nerve signals. One of the biggest complaints that I have, among my female patients is difficulty achieving orgasm and low libido. So when we get more antioxidants, there's actually a good amount of research that shows that antioxidant supplementation will actually strengthen and speed those nerve signals, the signals of pleasure. So that helps then with achieving orgasm. So they did a couple of studies with diabetic patients, because one of the biggest side effects of type 2 diabetes is reduced sexual pleasure. For females, reduced ability to have orgasm, reduced overall sexual satisfaction, reduced pleasure and arousal response to, lubrication, that sort of thing. And following antioxidant supplementation, their nerves they actually measured nerves, and they fired stronger, more rapid impulses, and they had better sexual satisfaction, easier orgasm, all that. So, leafy greens are a triple hitter. They're just, we definitely want to be including those a lot in our, regular diet.
Amazing. Yeah. I love my leafy greens too. My challenge for myself is, how can I add greens or leafy greens to just about every meal that I have? Because I know I feel better. My mind feels clear. My whole body feels aligned and like awake. So
yeah, I spend I spend a good portion of my time thinking of, that, not world hunger, but thinking how to incorporate more leafy greens.
Yeah.
In my
now I'm even more motivated too. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I throw a big, huge handful in my morning smoothie of spinach. Yeah. Sometimes I have an afternoon smoothie of, spinach and mango. And, of course, you can kind of incorporate them into sauteing too. If you saute your protein or whatever and just throw a handful in, you hardly even notice them.
Yeah. Amazing. Wow. That is a good place to start. So I wanted to transition a little bit from the diet approach to, how can we be a kind lover? Like, what does our partner really want? I know you write about this in the book, and it's probably different than what we think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I've got a chapter on that because, I feel like our society is kind of trending in the direction, there's like a good side to our more individualistic approach, and we're kind of coming into our own in many ways. And, we're saying, hey, I matter, I matter as a human being, and we're owning our assertiveness. We are owning our ability to speak our needs, and that's really important. The kind of flip side of that is that we're also kind of moving into kind of a selfie culture, where we're kind of self-obsessed. We shoot pictures of ourselves at every angle, at every time. We try to present this snapshot of our lives, on social media, that we have a certain lifestyle. We have, and we present a certain image, because image seems to be ever increasing in importance in our lives. And so, what we think a partner wants may be quite different from what they want. We see all of these images on the screen of, people with perfectly firm, they have a D cup, but somehow they just float on air. They don't droop at all. They have, we have people who they don't carry any weight in any part of their body except their ass and tits. Excuse my, is that okay to say that on your show? Okay. So
you're good.
It's like, it defies, physiology. They have
and gravity.
And gravity. We see, we see there's this porn, the porn industry with these massive penises that are, many times the size of the average penis. We have all these reasons to feel like we're not good enough. We're not rich enough. We're not good looking enough. We're not smart enough. We're not interesting enough. Maybe our lives we don't, travel around the globe and, just do these fun, interesting things all the time. And we feel inadequate. And that's kind of, I feel like most of us have dealt with some form of this. And, so I see so many people who don't feel like they're good enough to date. They don't feel good enough to have a partner be interested in them. And I think this isn't just like I think it's us, more we feel this way. There's an element to all of us. And we have to kind of challenge that, because most people really, at the end of the day, are just looking for somebody with whom they connect. We're looking for a good connection. Even though, I have these patients, for example, they come in, well, I'm thinking about getting a penile implant. I've measured my penis and it's only, such and such length. And, I want to make it longer. And I'm inwardly thinking, okay, length has nothing to do with pleasure. First of all, so making it longer, you're going to reduce your sensitivity. First of all, you're going to maybe have some scar tissue there. You're going to maybe create all these other problems to have a longer penis, which I don't care about that. Most people don't. It's like, that doesn't mean extra pleasure. I mean, certainly girth makes for more pleasure, but length really doesn't. So you're kind of missing the mark to begin with. But even the overarching thing is that, that's not really what's important. When I talk to people about what makes for great sex, it's not a long penis. And I wrote in the book about this when I went into this airport and I saw these signs, these posters for gynecological cosmetic surgery. And then I went on the website because I was just curious. I was kind of pissed off, quite honestly. I was like, Jesus Christ. Okay. So it's not enough to, be pressured to have bigger boobs and butts and everything. Now it's like we have to have pretty pussies. I'm sorry. Is this too much? I hope that language is okay.
You're good. You got it. Because I was going to ask you about like the mommy tuck before you said that. So okay. Keep going.
So I looked at these, they had before and after pictures on the website of these vulvas. And, it looked like some of the people were concerned that the labia minora was larger and extended out of the labia majora. That was a big concern. Basically they wanted porn style genitalia. And I was like, people don't care about this. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a not very scientific study. And I'm going to ask all of my friends who are into pussy if this was an improvement, if this was more sexually attractive for them. So I presented it to two of my lesbian friends. I presented it to my boyfriend at the time, a patient of mine at the time, and who I'd been seeing for years. I'd been treating for years at the time, and a friend of mine. And I said, okay, was it worth their money, risk, and all this investment? Would people rather have sex with this vagina than, how it was before? So all of the men in the group said that they were turned on by all of the genitals. Okay. The befores, the afters, they were in hospital paper and fluorescent lighting, and, it didn't matter. It was, it was still aroused. I'm like, that, and none of them said that the after picture looked any more attractive whatsoever. And I thought, exactly what I had expected. They're all perfectly fine before, they're perfectly fine after, but then you carry that extra risk. And, but it just gets to the heart of the issue of why don't we feel like we're good enough? Why don't we feel like just how we are, we're okay? Chances are your partner doesn't care. But this is the problem. Most of us experience that one person who made some comment about some aspect of our appearance, which may or may not have any basis in reality. And all of a sudden we felt insecure about it, carried it with us. My daughter is, average body size. She's 12. And she's like, oh no, I don't want to wear a bathing suit, because she said she was fat or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, how did you get this in your head? Who told you that you were fat? And I think, I have to admit, I think it was her brothers who said, like her 10-year-old brother who just made some off the cuff comment, which he shouldn't have said, but that stuck with her. And that's how it works, So at the end of the day, though, you may have a preference for tall guys or, big boobs or, we all have our preferences, but most of us will date well outside of our preferences. It's, again, more about the connection. So instead of focusing so much on the image, we really need to focus on, yes, loving ourselves, embracing our self-worth, and knowing that we are good enough because, if we could see past somebody else's flaws, imagine that they can also see past our flaws. And in so many cases, our flaws, actually what we think are our flaws, aren't even flaws. There's something some words that somebody said that planted a seed there that, just became reality for us.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you for all. And maybe add a lot of things I was thinking about during that. If you guys want to learn more about this topic, a really good area to look into, it's easy because I'm sure everybody here has Netflix. Goop did a series on sex. I think you just type Goop. One of the episodes was on Betty Dodson, and she just passed away 2 years ago, I think. But she was all about owning your sexual being and physical genitalia as a woman. And like, she was like this badass lady since like the 60s teaching. And she would take these classes and have all these naked women together. And you would be admiring your vulvas. And, you would be able to accept yourself for who you really are. And she teaches to have a mirror in front of you to really look at yourself. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about here, especially as women, we're taught, yes, big boobs and butts, that's over sexualized, but I've had to work through a lot of this and still am about owning more of myself, my genitalia, my vulva, that there isn't one way that one's prettier than the other. It's uniquely you.
That's exactly what all of the men said. They're like, my boyfriend at the time, he's like, oh, they're all attractive. He's like, it's so exciting to see what a woman's vulva is going to look like. You don't know what her nipples are going to look like. You don't know, it's exciting it's like a box of chocolates that you don't know what you're going to get. And it's like, it's a fun, exciting kind of thing, just like you said. But I remember being in middle school, either middle or high school, and hearing people talk about how women's crotches smelled like tuna. And it's like, it was a big joke, and it's like, that's the kind of messaging that we've been getting since we were, for decades, is that, the dick is something to be proud of, and the woman's is something to be ashamed of, or that it's ugly or smelly or, all those things. And, and of course, in the bedroom, historically, it's, men receive more than their share of oral sex compared with women, typically. I know lots of relationships where it's not even reciprocated at all, so it's definitely something that we as women have to work on, and we have to work on, changing just, the kindness. It's just a matter of kindness in the bedroom, taking the time to be kind as lovers. That means taking the time to understand our partner's body and their, the anatomy of it, what's pleasurable, finding out what they like. And not only that, but taking the time. The female body takes longer to pleasure, typically on average, and it takes a little bit more work, a little bit more understanding and education. And so being willing to put in the effort, that's being a kind lover, and that's on both ends. That's why I have a chapter in the book on oral sex, on how to do it both for, male and female genitalia, because I feel like knowing how to do that is an act of kindness. You want to call yourself a good lover. It's a good idea to, really learn how to pleasure your partner, but it's not enough to learn it generally. You really have to just work with your partner and ask them specifically questions. Always be wanting to learn more. Oh, does this feel good? Does that feel better? Because each person is different. Each person likes a different amount of pressure and all those other things.
Beautiful. And I know as a female, as you start to accept yourself and love yourself and deprogram that your vulva or your genitalia is dirty or stinky or ugly, whatever, you'll be willing to accept more pleasure and ask for it and be okay if it takes a long time. And be able to delight in every part of the step. It's not about the big shebang. Yes, orgasm is beautiful and healing and all this kind of stuff. But for me, and I think a lot of women, it's just like being okay with feeling pleasure, or being vulnerable in that situation and speaking up and saying, hey, what you were doing before was a lot, can we go do that versus like, this doesn't feel as good, and be able to own it, because in those situations, you're literally naked, but you're vulnerable and it's, learning to speak your truth, own your power, and pleasure is your birthright.
Yeah, absolutely. That's And women have to really own that. We really do. We have to just open our eyes and see that. I mean, I feel like younger people are much more willing to do that. But, I have friends who are like in relationships and marriages, in their 40s and later, who have kind of gotten into a cycle of not asking for pleasure. And, they're expected to have an orgasm without really their partner putting much work into it. And it's, becomes an issue of people's ego and, do I hurt my partner's feelings? All those things come into play. But yeah, so I feel like it's more important, especially for those who are in long-standing relationships where maybe they're not feeling satisfied sexually. I talk to people who think that they don't enjoy sex, or sex isn't that, much fun for them. And then when you kind of open up the onion, or, peel back the onion, you see that they're in partnerships where their partner doesn't really care that much about their pleasure, at least is never invested in learning about it. So it's like, if you have sex every time without, feeling pleasure, or, having a partner that's invested, of course you're not going to like sex, I mean, I have a friend who fakes an orgasm with her partner and then masturbates to achieve orgasm by herself, because it's, she doesn't want to hurt his feelings. So anyways.
Yeah, I know. And a good place to start, I guess, is because I've noticed in general with my friends, and what I've heard through women is that we don't know how to pleasure ourselves. So how are you going to ask and tell somebody else what to do if you don't know your own body? And that's, I think, is a great place to start, tiptoeing into that area, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Absolutely. Self-exploration.
Yeah. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share today, Christine? I know we went all sorts of different ways with this topic, which I loved, a lot of different positions, if you will. Was there anything else you wanted to kind of tie up some loose ends on before I started to close the show out today?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your experience, your wisdom with us all, and willing to speak your truth, because I think this topic, all parts of this as a holistic whole, needs to be heard, especially that latter part is women. Pleasure is our birthright, and it's scary, I think, because a lot of us are, like you said, becoming more individualistic society. You can say no if you don't want to have sex, but owning when you do, a whole nother topic to dive into another time. But thank you so much for showing up for us today. And how may we, as the listeners, as an act of gratitude, be of service for you in return today, Christine?
Oh, that's so kind of you to even suggest that. Well, I would say maybe go home and be kind to your partner. Just have some act of kindness to your partner. It's it always grows exponentially. Any act of kindness grows exponentially because it spreads more kindness and it promotes, other acts of kindness by others. And then if anybody wants to buy my book, it's available on Amazon. It's Diet for Great Sex. You can see me on my website, dietforgreatsex.com, and I'm on social media at Diet for Great Sex on Instagram and TikTok, where I have some recipe videos and that sort of thing.
Very fun. Thank you so much, Christine, for coming on. I know I learned a lot. I can't wait to sink my teeth into more and some recipes. I'm always down for some good recipes.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. This has been fun.
And remember, open up, surrender, trust, and let your body lead the way.